I used to think silence meant peace. Our house had always been loud in the ordinary ways, cabinet doors closing too hard, the television humming in the background, my sister pacing while arguing on the phone. Noise meant life moving forward, even when it was messy. But after my hospital appointment, the quiet changed texture. It wasn't calm. It was careful. My diagnosis sat between us at the dinner table like an uninvited guest no one acknowledged. My mother asked if anyone wanted more rice. My father commented on the weather shifting colder. I watched their hands instead of their faces. They moved efficiently, deliberately, as if they'd rehearsed this version of normal. I tried to follow along. I really did. But every time I looked at them, another night replayed in my mind, flashing lights staining the curtains blue and red, my mother crying openly into her palms, my father barking into his phone with a kind of urgency I'd never heard before. They had moved like people fighting a fire. Money had flowed without hesitation. Savings accounts drained, favors called in, flights booked. No one had mentioned costs then. Back in the present, my father cleared his throat and said, almost gently, "You should think about managing this on your own." As if I'd misplaced something minor, as if I'd dented a car. My mother nodded without looking at me. "You're strong. You'll figure it out." I remember smiling. Not because it didn't hurt, but because reacting felt pointless. My face felt oddly distant, like it belonged to someone trained to remain pleasant during bad service. "Thanks for showing me your kindness," I said. They both relaxed, mistaking composure for acceptance. That was the moment something inside me stopped reaching. I didn't argue. I didn't cry in front of them. I didn't slam doors or make accusations that would only ricochet uselessly around the house. Instead, I became attentive, observant. I started noticing patterns I had ignored for years: who was protected, who was expected to endure, who received urgency, who received advice. Meals became quieter for me. Not tense, just distant. I answered questions politely. I stopped volunteering details about my appointments. When my mother asked how I was feeling, I said, "Managing." It wasn't untrue. Late at night, when the house settled into sleep, I began organizing my life with the steady focus of someone preparing for a long trip. Insurance documents first. I read every line slowly, highlighter in hand. Then medical records scanned and sorted into labeled folders, passwords updated, emergency contacts reviewed. One form led to another. Practical tasks, necessary tasks. There was a strange comfort in paperwork. Systems didn't weigh worthiness, they processed information. Boxes were either filled or empty. Requirements were either met or unmet. No one tilted the scale based on preference. One afternoon at the hospital, a social worker sat across from me with a tablet resting on her knees. She spoke gently, but there was a precision to her questions. "Are you financially dependent on your parents?"
Yes.
"Have they declined assistance for essential treatment?" I hesitated, then nodded. She didn't react emotionally. She simply typed. "What reason did they provide?" I repeated my father's words as neutrally as possible. Saying them aloud made them sound colder than I remembered, or maybe I was just hearing them clearly for the first time. She paused, then looked up. "Okay. I'm going to refer this to our patient advocacy office. There are policies regarding dependent care responsibility. Someone may contact your family for clarification." I blinked. "Contact them." "Yes. This isn't uncommon. Try not to worry." But I didn't feel worry. I felt something steadier than that: recognition. For the first time, my situation existed outside the emotional politics of our home. It had entered a system that required explanations, documentation, accountability. 2 days later, my phone buzzed while I was resting. My mother's name lit the screen. I let it ring once more before answering. Her voice was sharp, strained. "What did you do?" I said nothing. "There's some hospital official asking about our finances, about obligations. They're saying things that sound legal." "Why would you tell them we refused to help you?" I studied the faint cracks in the ceiling paint. I told them the truth. "How could you?" she demanded. Do you know how this makes us look? That question lingered between us. Not how are you feeling, not what do you need, just reputation. Appearance. Exposure. My father's voice entered from somewhere behind her, tense and hurried. I could imagine him pacing now, phone pressed tight to his ear the way he had the night my sister was arrested. Only this time, urgency wasn't for her. Forms, policies, institutional language, these were not things he could silence with authority or override with confidence. This was a different kind of conversation, one where dismissal sounded like neglect when written down. My mother's voice cracked. You need to fix this. I closed my eyes. Why? I asked quietly. You said I should take care of myself. The line went silent except for her breathing. You'd better start praying. I added, not as a threat, but as a tired acknowledgement that some situations move beyond personal control. After the call ended, I placed the phone beside me and stared at the window. My hands weren't shaking. My chest didn't feel tight. I just felt level. Not vindicated, not triumphant, just steady. The hospital moved quickly after that. Evaluations were expedited. Financial responsibility forms were revised. Meetings were scheduled where language like duty of care and legal dependency replaced softer family terminology. My parents attended one of the calls. I could hear the difference in their voices, measured, cautious, stripped of the casual certainty they once carried. They asked procedural questions now. Clarified timelines. Discussed payment structures. They sounded like people reading unfamiliar instructions very carefully. When I saw them in person again, nothing dramatic happened. No raised voices, no theatrical apologies. My mother brought fruit I didn't ask for. My father stood with his hands in his pockets, posture stiff but uncertain. We're working it out, he said. I nodded, I know, and I did. Treatment began under revised arrangements. Progress felt slow but tangible. Nurses spoke to me directly, explaining each step with calm professionalism. Every improvement, however small, felt earned through process rather than persuasion. At home, conversations became polite and brief. My parents asked practical questions. I gave practical answers. Something fundamental had shifted, not shattered, not healed, just rearranged. They were careful with me now. But care offered under obligation feels different from care offered freely. It isn't worthless. It simply carries a different weight. I no longer searched their faces for reassurance. I no longer measured my value through their urgency. Survival had taught me a quieter metric. Accountability matters more than declarations. Sometimes systems succeed where emotions fail. I'm getting better. Slowly, our family still gathers at the same table. The television still hums, cabinets still close too loudly. But I understand something now that I didn't before. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes, it's what remains after you stop asking to be chosen.